in my rounds throughout the internet, I come across many things, and I saw a couple threads on various message boards about the IGN Nintendo Voice Chat podcast. Now, let me start by saying this. I don't listen to any podcast except the H3 podcast. I listen to that while I'm walking for fun. That's it. Not interested in podcasts, not really a fan. I'm open to finding new shows, but whatever.
The irony.
So I know, right? So the IGN Nintendo Voice Chat podcast, I've had a few instances where I come in contact with it, but I am not a regular listener. But I saw a couple threads about a particular episode. The episode's name was, because I wrote it down, IGN Nintendo Voice Chat number 671. We probably won't see a Pikmin 5. That was the podcast title. I went back to double check today. People were
wrong.
People were upset about this podcast because they felt there was some misinformation and a lack of paying attention to the news in this segment that they had. And I was like, I'll go in, I'll listen. I know a little bit about Nintendo. I'll do some research and I'll see if there's anything worth talking about. And I do feel there is. Now, let me say this. I saw people say on Patreon, we love when you do rebuttals, because I also love doing them. But my point with a rebuttal isn't to dunk on somebody, isn't to bash somebody. This is no ill will towards anyone at IGN. This is no ill will towards anyone on the podcast in particular. Just, I feel they did a segment that could have a rebuttal or a counterpoint, or just some more context with facts based on what they were saying. So please, this isn't a hit piece. This isn't anything meant to be mean. Just want to stress that again, which I always do, yet somehow someone always, tweets it to somebody at IGN and they're like, a big thing starts. So I'm prepared for it this time, but here we go. So they talked about Pikmin 4. Thank you, Josh. That's right. They talk about Pikmin 4 and how it was selling. Now, if you listen to the Go Nintendo podcast, especially last week, you would have heard tons of discussion about Pikmin 4 sales, because we were saying, wow, it looks like this is the Pikmin game to really break through. Well, if you listen to IGN, you would hear the complete opposite. So one of their voice chat members, one of the hosts on the show, had said that it looked like Pikmin 4 wasn't selling well. Now, here's where the first issue comes up. What metric were they using for this sales data? I can give you hard numbers. IGN did not. IGN's only point of reference for sales that they use to say it's not really selling well is IGN's commerce division. So I don't know how many of you know this, but you can go on IGN and buy video games. I have never done it. I don't know anyone who does it, but clearly people do it. This isn't a knock against them doing it. But if I'm going to buy a game, I'm not like, let me go to IGN and buy it. I'm like, let me go to Amazon or maybe Walmart.
Can you start
or Best
selling
Buy.
games then? Does that mean?
Sure.
Can anybody?
Yeah,
Let's
you
start
can.
selling some
I could buy
games.
games and sell them. Sure. I'll autograph every
I'll
copy.
be the head of the commerce
Hey.
department.
So they said, according to their commerce numbers, it showed that their audience wasn't interested in the game. And for an example, they sold about 10 times more copies of Front Mission. That's just the one that they use as an example.
Always front mission to back mission.
That's
never
right.
back mission to front mission.
So first things first, again, not trying to knock IGN here. But, when you're looking at Circana numbers, formerly NPD, you're getting a picture of all the retail outlets in the United States. When you're talking about IGN,
Hey, be quiet. I think I hear
that's
something.
right, Josh. Formerly, it's Circana now, Josh. IGN's gonna listen to this and be like, "What the hell?" That is what you sound like.
Is that what I sound like?
Yep. So Circana reports the numbers, and that comes from retail partners. That doesn't include, to my knowledge, IGN's data. I don't know what IGN's snapshot of the market at large really is. I don't know how much their audience really indicates what's going on in terms of sales overall. So again, they didn't share any actual numbers from IG or from their commerce department. They just said Front Mission is selling 10 times more. And again, they weren't saying this to be like Pikmin sucks. They were all talking about how much they really like Pikmin, minus the one person who hasn't played any Pikmin games, said it's on their list, but they're playing other stuff. So there's that. They also said Xenoblade Chronicles didn't sell well. And they got into Pikmin numbers and Xenoblade Chronicles numbers. So they said Xenoblade Chronicles 3 sold 1.86 million as of March 2023. That is correct. And Pikmin 3 Deluxe sold 2.2 million. That is also correct. But to say that they're not selling well, I think that's completely ignorant of the franchises, their sales so far, and their bigger place in the game industry in general. Xenoblade Chronicles 3, or all Xenoblade games, are very much what we traditionally call JRPGs. We're trying to think of a better term than that, but JRPGs. And that is, in today's market, more of a niche audience. You know, that's why Final Fantasy 16 in particular is a shell of what Final Fantasy games used to be. They're not turn-based anymore. They're not really traditional RPGs. They're action-adventure games, action RPG very loosely. But that's why Final Fantasy or Square Enix is trying to move away from that, because they're trying to reach a bigger audience. But Square Enix also has games like Octopath Traveler and Triangle Strategy, which are very much traditional JRPGs, or at least more in that genre, which don't need to sell multiple millions to be considered a success, because it's a smaller team making them with a smaller budget. So those games are certainly successes, as we've seen, because Square Enix has made Octopath Traveler 2. Bravely Default, like Alternate List says, that's also correct. Yeah, those. Something like Xenoblade Chronicles, the whole franchise, takes more money than an Octopath, obviously, but still, it's within a budget, and that's Nintendo and Monolith Soft working together. And those games are incredibly successful for that genre, which shows why there's been 3 of them and a side one as well so far. They do well for Nintendo and Monolith Soft. So yes, they're not like, you know, the 12 million in sales that a Resident Evil game gets, but a 2.5 or close, or a 2.8 million units sold. That's a lot for that kind of game. That's an important perspective that needs to be put out there. Now, as far as Pikmin 4 sales, in particular, we don't know where the game is at right now in terms of sales, but I really believe it to be very disingenuous of IGN to be like, the game's not selling well, because the only data we have right now shows that it's selling much better than any previous Pikmin game. And I have the data. So as we said, Pikmin 4, when it launched in Japan, its launch week in Japan, it sold 401,000 physical copies. So the digital numbers aren't there. And as we said last week, 401,000 sales in 1 week is more than every other Pikmin game's launch week sales combined, not individually, combined. So 1, 2, and 3 combined, their launch week sales were lower than what Pikmin 4 did on its own in 1 week without digital numbers.
So did Pikmin 1, 2, and 3, did they get sequels, or?
That's the other thing.
Oh, wait,
yeah,
they
did. Yes.
Check in me.
Nintendo wants to
you're
say
saying
something
they
here.
didn't give any data when they were talking about this? Like, how can they make the claim and then you have the numbers?
That's why it's
there?
confusing to me, because they know the numbers. They reference a couple numbers here and there, and I'm paraphrasing. They said things like roughly it had a strong launch week in Japan or whatever, blah, blah, blah. But then they really pivoted away from that very quickly to be like IGN's commerce numbers, blah, 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 which they didn't say how many there were. But like I'm saying, the actual factual numbers that we do have show not just a strong launch, a much bigger launch than any previous Pikmin game. Again, Pikmin 1, 2, and 3 combined could not beat the launch week sales of Pikmin 4 in Japan alone. And I need to heavily stress this again. This does not include digital numbers. So just physical sales alone, it beat it. Throw in digital, my own speculation here. Nintendo doesn't share digital numbers. You would guess somewhere in between another 100,000 to 200,000 digital copies were sold in that launch week.
So they just got a
Amazing.
vendetta against Pikmin? What's the
Well,
problem with
that's the
Pikmin?
other thing. They also all like Pikmin, except the one person who hasn't played it but is interested. So it's just very confusing to me that this is the approach that they would take. Again, not saying it was malicious. Don't think they're ignorant. Just it was an odd way to approach the subject for me.
Or they're like talking about it in the context of, like you said, other games that
Their main sales thing was like, here on IGN where we sell games, our audience isn't buying it. And that was really...
I mean, that
yeah.
makes sense.
And there
I
what
would not
percentage
expect
of-
I don't know what the IGN audience buys, but if you asked me,
Yes.
what would sell well on IGN, I'd be like Elden Ring, Call of Duty, Grand Theft
Call of Duty,
Auto,
bro.
that kind of
Mr.
stuff.
Nintendo
But
games.
again, I don't know. I don't know who buys games on IGN. That's not a knock against them. I honestly do not know.
This is the first I'm hearing that they sell
Yeah.
games.
So there's that number. Also,
Doesn't anyone care what I think?
tell me, Josh, what do you think?
I'm a hardcore gamer.
Oh, Josh buys from IGN. Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
Hell yeah.
Also, in the UK, we don't know the numbers because UK doesn't share the numbers, but we know Pikmin 4
Did you know you
debuted.
can play Tetris for free
Yes,
on
Tetris, Josh.
Tetris.com?
You're a hardcore gamer that plays Tetris.
That was a really great story.
In the UK, Pikmin 4 debuted at number 1 on the physical charts in the UK. Now, remember, UK charts come out every week, and all the games on there include digital and physical sales. But Nintendo doesn't report digital sales, so Pikmin 4 was number 1 just based on physical sales alone in its launch week in the UK. And it beat out Pikmin 3 Deluxe, which was on Switch. Pikmin 3 Deluxe was the previous highest or best-selling Pikmin game in the UK. It beat out Pikmin 3 Deluxe's launch by 45%, nearly half. So that's a lot to beat it out by. And once again, I need to doesn't include digital numbers. And here's something else we don't have numbers for, but it's certainly an indicator to show you how well the game is doing. Pikmin 4 is number 1 on the North American eShop charts, and it has been number 1 since it launched. So literally beating out Tears of the Kingdom, which has had unbelievable. We are 7 weeks out from Tears of the Kingdom, 6.5 weeks out from Tears of the Kingdom's launch. It's number 2 on the eShop charts, but so it's still very strong. But Pikmin 4 since launch has been at number 1 on the eShop charts. So we have the 401,000. I'm not counting data from Japan for this week because IGN put out their podcast before that data came out. Once again, Pikmin 4 was number 1 in Japan again. So with Japan's numbers alone, not counting digital, we're over or very close to 600,000 units. So literally in Japan alone, if you're factoring in digital, we're hovering around the 750,000 to 1 million units sold in Japan. That's my own guesstimate, but based on the data that we do have and, expectations for how digital usually works, that's the figure we're at. That doesn't include the rest of the world. So we don't know. Unfortunately, Nintendo's quarter 1 fiscal results ended on June 31st. So
there is no 31st of June.
Or June 30th. So we don't have the Pikmin numbers because Pikmin came out in July. So we'll have to wait until Nintendo's next quarterly report to get those numbers. So that will be October. But it's going to be the best selling. Just like Nikki Hill and I said that one time. I said Kirby's Kirby in the Forgotten Realm, as Deuce says. I said that was going to be the best-selling Kirby game of all time. It is. I'm saying right now, Pikmin 4 is going to be the best-selling Pikmin game of all time. We'll find out in October if I'm right. I think it's going to be easily that. So every indicator we have right now, including hard sales numbers and chart placements and sales charts that don't include numbers but show number placement, as in 1 through 10, all indicate that Pikmin 4 is doing not just better than all previous installments, but considerably better. So that's my rebuttal to IGN. And also, yes, the clickbait title.
That's me dropping the mic.
Oh, thank you. We probably won't see a Pikmin 5. One person on the IGN podcast did say, I don't think we'll see a Pikmin 5. I guess based on these commerce numbers that they said, I want to say everybody else on that crew pushed back on that, was like, no, we're going to see a Pikmin 5. Somebody's like, we'll probably see a Pikmin 5 in another, I forget what they said, 5 years or something like that, which, yeah, I agree. That will probably be the case. It's not a franchise that Nintendo has a more frequent cadence with. Like, you're not going to see a new Pikmin game every 2 years or something like that. But yes, it's silly. We're definitely 1,000,000% going to see another Pikmin game. Even with Pikmin games not being big sellers, as Dew said, we've seen 3 Pikmin games already. They've been re-released multiple times, and we had a spin-off Pikmin game on the 3DS. There's going to be another Pikmin game. So there's my rebuttal. Again, no hate towards anyone at IGN. Oh, there's a point I do want to bring up about this that's not related to sales numbers. one of the hosts said they found the game to be too easy. But then they also talked about how they did scum saving or save scumming, whichever order you prefer to say it in, which defeats the purpose. Save scumming is
What is that? A traditional save? That's a terrible
yes.
name for it.
So
Traditional save sounds so much more like
well,
it
that's
was
something
added
you
into
made
the
up,
game.
and it doesn't make any sense at all. It's just sense for you.
Well, I mean, it makes me feel better about using it.
What like I've never bothered to ask what's traditional about it because it doesn't matter to me. Like it's your thing and I love it. It's great.
Thank you.
But between save scumming and traditional save, one I understand and one doesn't make any
You
sense.
could also just go with the tradish.
But anyway,
As
save scumming is you go into a game,
Mhm.
you play the game, something happens that you don't like, you go back and reload your save and do it again.
Oh, I do that in Tears of the Kingdom.
Oh,
There
I
you
call
go.
that reloading. I
So
didn't know it was
mean,
called
it's fine
save
to do.
scumming.
It's an option.
I'm not saying it's not fine to do. It's that you do whatever you want. But you
That's what
this
I
is
want.
my opinion.
But how do you sleep at night?
You-
Is what I'm saying.
You can't say Pikmin 4 is too easy. Also, I save scum.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah,
you're
Those
using
two don't
Made
go
it
together.
easy.
you're
Yeah.
using all the tools they give you to make
and
it
they
very
said they
easy.
save scum mostly because they're like, for two reasons. They said because they did a dungeon and they're like, I could have done this better. So that's not really save scumming.
Mm.
But also they said they've done it where they lost too many Pikmin and they're like, I want to go back in it. So then yes. So you can't argue that it's too easy and also say you save scum. Again,
Can't be that easy.
I don't care if you save scum. That's fine. Play however you want. My argument is don't say the game's too easy and then also talk about how it was too hard at sections and you redid it.
Yeah, I think you can clearly say, I mean, in my opinion, that it's the easiest of the 4 Pikmin games, but I wouldn't call it too easy. I wouldn't quote too easy and have them slap it on the back of the box.
You know, it's very interesting for me because I would say I would say it's at least one of the easier Pikmin games, but I will also say I've lost more Pikmin in this game than any other.
But couldn't you argue that, like, to an extent, it's as easy or as difficult as you make it? You know, like, if you want to save as many Pikmin as possible, or like,
Yes.
you know, there's like a little
If
bit
you're
of
very
a
particular
choice.
about it. Yeah, but that's the thing. Like, say you're going in and being like, I want to save as many Pikmin as possible. Let's say you lose Pikmin. If you do the save scumming,
Right.
that's where you have to differentiate. You have to
Right.
say, I chose to reload the save. And then I think that negates your ability to say it's too easy. You can't say it's too easy if you're going in to make it easier on yourself. Because obviously when you go in the second time, you know the layout, you have an idea of at least what's going to happen. So you can't say that. I'm not arguing Pikmin 4 is the hardest game ever. I'm just saying, don't tell me in one breath it's too easy. And in the second, say, I keep resetting or I keep reloading the game.
Take it easy.
Again, I really need to stress this isn't me being like, play it the real way. Don't do that. Do that all that you want. My argument is don't tell me it's easy and then load your save again. That I feel are two statements that don't go together. Again, no hate to that person or anyone on the IGN crew. I am not here to spread hate. Just offer a different perspective. IGN, this has happened before. I hate dredging up old information or old one-sided beef, but I did a rebuttal a long time ago. It caught fire. It got to IGN. Some of the people didn't bother to listen. Some of the people saw that the video was like, I forget how long it was, 20 minutes. And they're like making a 20-minute reply video and like the upside down smiley face. And I'm like, okay, like this is disingenuous. You're not even going to listen to
Clown
my
face.
response because I'm not mean. I'm not rude. I wasn't attacking none of that. It's just an honest rebuttal. IGN, if this does make it back to you and you hear this and you'd like to talk to me about what I said or discuss the thing in general, more than happy to. We could do it here. We could do it on your show. We could do it anywhere you want. I'm not out to be rude, mean, anything like that. If anything, it's a great conversation to have, and we're all Nintendo fans here, and that's all that matters to me. So there you go. That's my researched segment. And again, thank you. This was based on data that was only available up to the point of where they recorded their podcast, because it would not be fair for me to share data that came afterwards because they didn't have that information. So there you go, everybody.